I'm angry because you started this as a joke, but the cat butthole cut of this episode could exist. There's a variant. Sinclair could be walking in and there's a litter box in the corner and she's like turning around and you're like, what's going on?
Bring us the B5 litter box cut.
Meow.
It was the dawn of a new season of You've Got to Check This Out, 10 weeks after the Nerd Youngblood episode. The Babylon 5 television show was a dream given form. Its goal to tell a 5-year story arc and prove the audience would follow along peacefully. It's a major accomplishment, a seminal work, a nostalgic property for nerds, geeks, children of the 80s, and our hosts. This season, we'll dive deep into Babylon 5 Season 1. The year is 2025, and you've got to check this out.
Welcome, everybody, to Nerd. You got to check this out with Mike and Dre. I am Dre, which means you are...
I'm Mike Slater, and I'm here again with you for You Got to Check This Out.
So I'm guessing that you are probably here listening from patreon.com/Jeff May. Jeff Has Cool Friends, where I do the Nerd Podcast with Jeff May. Mike Slater, found most places as Slatron or Slatron11. That's Slatron 11, as on Blue Sky. And then I am Nerd Numbers, most places, also known as Dre Alvarez. Take your pick. We did an episode on Youngblood, which never read Youngblood. It's coming back.
Yeah,
Mike,
that's why we made the episode, was so you'd never have to read it.
Yeah, we can rip off other content creators who have a tagline like that. We watch it so you don't have to. And we were discussing like wanting to do other stuff. And as you are mentioning, doing Babylon 5 as a subject. And the premise we came up with for this, as we've said, is You Got to Check This Out, is what if instead of having a show where we make the assumption that the guests, that the hosts, that the listeners are all going to know everything, what if we can give you a bite-sized chunk of something we enjoy and kind of say, hey, you don't have to do everything. So we are to Babylon 5. Now, spoiler alert, we are going to be trying to go through the entire series, but we're not doing a watch along. We're not doing beat by beat. There are people that have done that. There are YouTube channels, every single episode, with the basic point being take a couple episodes from each season. So we are on season 1 of Babylon 5. That's what we are doing now. We're going over episodes of season 1. Our goal is that you are able to listen to this episode and or kind of like old school. This may sound like magic to some of you, but there was a time in life for many of us, you and me included, Mike, where they would show individual episodes on television. And you would have no idea about the show before it, and you might never see the show again, or it might be months before you saw the show again because you weren't around at that time or you forgot which network it was on, and you saw a single episode of television, and a friend might say, oh, this is awesome, you got to watch this, and sit you down. And you and I both had this experience, Mike. You had this in college. A friend of yours introduced you to Babylon 5. You hadn't seen a bunch of it, so you hadn't even seen the season 1, which we're on. Myself, huge shout out to Rich Henderlight, a middle school teacher's assistant who introduced me to this. So we both had this experience of, hey, this is an episode of TV you've got to check out. If you sit down to watch this episode, you might have no idea. So how can we fill you in? And we're like, let's do that for Babylon 5. We're going to go in chronological order, but we're not going to do the entire season. We're just going to do episodes that we really think stand out. And for one reason or another, you've got to check this out.
Yeah, I think a big part of what I want to do is be able to jump around to different topics, but give each topic or pop culture or whatever you and I decide to do this on enough time. I don't want to like box it in as like, hey, we're just going to do 3 episodes for this. I think going season by season and doing a few episodes on each season is perfect for something like Babylon 5. Part of each episode is going to be us filling you in on what you've missed over the last few episodes. So in case you want to vicariously experience Babylon 5 through us as a way to dip your toes into it, hopefully you'll be watching along with us, but you could still do it, and we'll kind of let you know what's going on with the big story through the Babylon 5 series.
We're definitely going to have a couple seasons of this, as you mentioned. I like the idea, like, let's not box ourselves in, but we have already committed to months of work at minimum to get through Babylon 5, so I'm fine. For the planned episodes for season 1, we are doing Deathwalker, season 1, Babylon 5. This is episode 9 of season 1 of Babylon 5 to keep you in the loop. But we're to what Mike was saying, we're going to get you caught up from the last time we spoke.
And now, Dre explains.
Let's briefly just touch on, if you missed the first episode on Babylon 5, the key part about this is Babylon 5 was a 5-season arc pitched by J. Michael Straczynski, which at the time was phenomenal. Because as I was explaining, the world at that time was television, meaning you didn't know when you were going to catch an episode and you didn't know when you were going to catch the next episode. So the idea of telling someone, I want to tell a story over 5 years on the traditional television model of 20 plus episodes a season, and who even knows if people are going to be able to keep it all in memory, was an outlandish take. And as we were going to discuss a little, arguably JMS did it twice with the same idea, which is phenomenal. So we're going to talk that. Let's get you caught up to where you are. So Babylon 5 is a floating space station to kind of keep the peace after a major war between the Earth and the Minbari, or, the Federation and the Romulan, if you were to graft this onto Star Trek. We did up to episode 4, but Mike, we're going to pretend, in case that doesn't air, we'll do the first 8 episodes. I'm just going to give the stinger about what you may have missed if you're coming this as your first episode. And Mike, if you want to add any flavor, we can. Season 1's interesting because it's the one I've watched the least, but I have seen it multiple times now, especially having done a full rewatch for this show.
Previously on Babylon 5.
So episode 1 was Midnight on the Firing Line, where we basically are introduced to Jakar, the evil reptilian alien, and Londo Mollari, the bumbling buffoon, and kind of are just introduced to the premise, floating space station to keep the peace between a bunch of kind of comical aliens. All right, episode 2, one of my favorites, Soul Hunter, where we are introduced to what if the Grim Reaper was a serial killer. Written by Harlan Ellison, kind of burned that, but also gets us to learn about the Minbari, one of the older races on the ship.
I like what they did with it, because there was a lot of foreshadowing for the Minbari souls in that.
Episode 3, where we've got Born to Purple, we're kind of introduced to Centauri politics. Centauri are the guys with peacock-like feather hair that are very pompous and old aristocrats, kind of dead in an old era. And it's going to be funny to say what happens when your patriotism gets the best of you.
Yeah, that was the one with the bald dancer at the beginning too, where Londo was in the bar.
Yep. All right. Episode 4 was Infection. That's an episode we recorded on, which is what if organic technology from a dead race threatened everybody?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Miss Piggy was there too, but that's about it.
Miss Piggy was there too. You did a great impression, and unfortunately, Zoom filtered it out. So we only, I know what it sounded like, Mike, but the rest of the world only gets, I think it got condensed down to a 2-second clip out of, I would argue, I think 10 to 30 seconds.
That's okay, Dre. They'll hear many more of the impressions as we go on.
Well, that's Kermit. Kermit sticks around, but Miss Piggy might be a little too loud. We got episode 5 is the Parliament of Dreams, where we have a assassin attempt to take out Jakar. Which is definitely kind of funny.
Yep, I only remember the scene where the Narn was put on the glasses at the end. There was he's talking to Jakar, he's like, let me see your shot, and puts on this little teeny tiny pair of lizard glasses on his lizard face.
There is something so hilarious in science fiction about things that make complete sense, and you're like, but that just doesn't work. The lizard man alien cannot wear glasses, and I think they learned their lesson there, so they never do it again. But it's like, it makes complete sense. He has eyes, they have vision, they're gonna have to do that, but for some reason you just can't do that. I was gonna say, the good news is the next couple of episodes really are gonna relate to what we have, so it's good backstory. We have episode 6, Mind War, which is where we are introduced to the premise of the Psi-Core, which is Earth's ability to control telepaths. This universe has telepaths, people who can read minds, implant memories in minds, erase memories, hugely important. And we are introduced to Bester, a great villain who's going to show up later, played by Walter Koenig, who is also Chekhov on Star Trek. More importantly, Talia Winters, the telepath on our show, gets a major power upgrade in that episode, which that might change the balance of powers. We might have to deal with that. So that's going to come up in this episode.
Or it may go absolutely nowhere.
It may go. Well, that's spoiler alert. We maybe talk more about that. Episode 7 is the war prayer, which introduces us to some jingoistic fashions from Earth. So despite the fact that we have this space station dedicated to peace across the galaxy, people on Earth aren't a fan because there was this big war between the Minbari and the Earthers back in the day. And shocker, there's still fallout from that. So that happens, and there's a singer. That episode was not great, but it was an episode. The last episode before this one is And the Sky Full of Stars, where we are revealed that our commander Sinclair, who is the leader of the ship, he blacked out during the last days of this major war and doesn't remember what happened. And in the pilot television movie, made for TV movie for this, a Minbari, who's like one of the more older, more powerful races, tells him there is a hole in your mind. And that's, by the way, going to lead to this. So basically, he has put in a weird Matrix-like program, and other people are trying to figure out what the heck happened during the war. And we find out, we at least get an inkling that the Minbari, you'll be shocked, Mike, the Minbari have more going on than they let appear, which is kind of like one of the theses of the show. Is all these alien races, they're not what they appear. They have other things going on that we might not know. So the noble, religious alien race that's like, we don't lie. Hey, maybe they're not as altruistic as you might think.
Well, we considered that one heavily to do a whole episode on, because that's kind of the first time in the series that they take a big leap from just episode of the week format, with JMS just putting a story, big plot elements in the background. It's for a lot of world building, and it really dumps a lot of what's gonna blossom into Sinclair and the Minbari, his whole past with the Minbari War.
And that brings us to Deathwalker, which interesting, because what you were saying, right? That episode is kind of a turning point, and I would say this episode we kind of decided is the major turning point, because episode 8 you could kind of think of as a second pilot, right? We kind of reset the stakes of the show, and then on this episode we're off to the races. So when we're talking Infection, that the first episode we recorded, that's Monster of the Week, brand new sci-fi show, how we're setting things up. This is, I would argue, the first episode where we've got the geopolitical, the big, long arching story arch, a bunch of storylines coming together. Let's get into Babylon 5. All right, so the episode we are discussing is Deathwalker for the 100th time. The two major names we have as guest stars coming in are Sarah Douglas, most known as being the evil Kryptonian. So many female comic related characters from my childhood and puberty where you're just like, you know, that did something to you, right? You grew up with like the evil, powerful women in comics. Jeff makes jokes about this all the time, about like the various comic characters where you're just like, I had a crush on this person, and I wonder what that did to me as an adult. So Sarah Douglas is the evil Kryptonian in Superman 2.
I just watched that a couple weeks ago too, and it's like she does absolutely almost nothing in that movie but like wear different clothes and then scowl.
She like picks up a general or laughs at some point. That is a wild episode, and we'll just have to put a pin in this for future because we've already spent a lot of time. But like Superman 2, I have thoughts. I think, as Jeff would say from the Base Nerd show, I think nostalgia does a lot for people on that. I think there is a lot of great stuff that Superman did for the industry. We can't take that away from it. But if you go back to Superman 2 with where we're at now... you watch those first 4 Superman movies in a row, and just such a decline in quality from one to the next, and just the zany ideas that they tried to pull off with less and less resources. My God. The third movie, he's like flying. He doesn't fly any more than like right off the ground by a few feet because they couldn't afford to take him off. Which is funny because like the clip for making the Superman movies was like, you'll believe a man can fly. So Sarah Douglas, though, she is the evil Kryptonian in Superman 2, has been around like I think in terms of guest actors that we've had on the show, she's going to be in that mid tier. Like we're all over the place. We have some huge names that have been everywhere. The next person we have is Cozy Costa. I hope I'm getting his name right. Which he is just a fascinating cat. And this is like, it seems like a bit guy who did a couple roles and then kind of stopped acting after this, which is pretty common a lot,
Did you know who that role, did you see who that role was supposed to be played by? Mind.
So I'm going to let, you got the research, Mike, so I'm going to let you get the drop.
Well, in my research, it said that Gilbert Gottfried was supposed to play the guy with the brain, but he just couldn't get him.
That is... I'm going to give you a solid Gilbert Gottfried. Before we started recording the show, you were doing, a Tom Hardy Bane, which sounded a little like Jimmy Stewart. And I was like, you know what? Jimmy Stewart is Bane tracks. So Jimmy Stewart was a giant. But let's actually get on the show. Okay.
I was born in Philadelphia.
We'll see if that makes the cut. Okay. So the major change we're already going to notice, this was a major turning point, is the first scene in this episode. We jump right in it, and we're going kind of like at full burn. The two characters we are seeing is Kosh, who is a Vorlon, one of the oldest races. He's in this encounter mech suit, just really supposed to be ominous. And Talia Winters, our resident telepath. And we are actually getting a lot of really good character development because Kosh is saying, I've hired you to do a job. Talia is clearly kind of scared by the Vorlon, saying, I don't want to do this job. He's saying, I've already paid for it. I've already arranged. We'll do the job. Then he says this weird phrase. He says, we'll meet at the hour of scampering. And we get the implication she doesn't have a choice. So this is really good character development for the Vorlons as this ominous, terrible, like, you can't say no, and our telepath. And
is this our first talk of a Vorlon? Is this our first Kosh talk on the show? Because he didn't really figure in too much. Our official one.
The Vorlons are huge in the pilot episode, and there are this kind of in the background species that it's very fascinating because it is like the most powerful alien race that just doesn't do anything, but everybody is scared of them. And I think this is the first episode where they do a ton.
Yeah, you don't. It's definitely that type of writing where they don't get to see him like doing powerful acts or like blowing things up or using the force or whatever, but just how everybody reacts to him.
I would make the argument here that this was watching some learning experiences, which is in later seasons, Vorlons are usually going to be in mists, in dark places, and not a lot of movement. If you go look up what a Vorlon looks like, they have like this shiny purple cape, and so, but he's in this big moving mech suit that moves very slow. So he would kind of turn around to be kind of ominously leaving, and I was like, this does not look ominous or terrifying. I think they learned.
Oh no, it looks like something out of Captain EO. Do you remember Captain EO?
What is
Michael Jackson?
Oh
gosh. So in Epcot Center, Michael Jackson had his own attraction there, and there was this video where Michael Jackson interacted with puppets and stuff, and it was kind of like this space futuristic thing. That's what the environmental suit reminds me of. It's just that aesthetics, kind of like sci-fi future space labyrinth.
Yeah, and I mean that's the other thing. We've talked this a bunch already, but this is season 1. There is learning, right? You kind of learn what works, you learn what doesn't. You learn that Talia Winters may not be the best. You learn you need to frame the Vorlons differently, but we get introduction to that. Now, Mike, next scene, I say enter Deathwalker for scene 2. I'm going to have an argument with you already out of the gate, Michael. It's almost like I'm going to come out of nowhere, Michael, and sucka punch you.
And sucka punch.
Yes, because what I'm going to say is we're introduced.
So you're saying that this is, I read your notes. They're saying this is a sucker punch. So when I said this is definitely not a sucker punch when she gets hit, it's because it looked like she said Deathwalker announcing it and then ran at her.
So yeah,
that's why I thought it's like announcing the punch negates the sucker punch.
I'm going to give the full story to people. So we have Natoth, who is the aide to Jakar, and Natoth is waiting for someone. And Natoth looks and sees this person. Now, what we get ominously is a Minbari ship came in, which we are told, hey, Minbari ship is docking. A non-Minbari person gets off this ship. It's going to come up. Natoth sees this person, loudly yells Deathwalker, charges that person and hits them. Now you're saying she announced it, but I just having watched this scene, there is not time for Deathwalker to respond. And then Natoth, not only does she punch Deathwalker and just start wailing, she picks up like a tire iron or something that's just hanging out in the docking bay and just starts wailing on her. So I make the argument this is a sucker punch. Brief recap. If you didn't catch last show, shame on you. Make sure you listen to it if it's already out. And if it's not already out, make sure you go forward in time, listen to it, and then travel back in time so you can re-listen to this episode and it makes sense.
Meet us halfway on this one.
Yeah. But Mike, you came up with this. I love this so much. You found this. In season 1, you revealed that there are a variety of times that to get out of a scene, JMS just has one character punch another character, sucker punch them. And your credentials for it is one character doesn't know it's coming. And your argument for why this works is it's going, how do we advance the stakes? How do we advance the scene quickly? And it is the Steve Carell in The Office, like, hey, if you're an improv, just pull a gun. JMS's answer is like, hey, if I'm in a scene and I need to get out of the scene, somebody just punches them. Natoth attacks with such ferocity that even her yelling it, I argue, still counts as a sucker punch because I don't think Deathwalker's able to respond.
So here's what I'll say as well, because by the time that the listener hears this, there will be an article dedicated to sucker punches throughout season 1 on MikeSlater.com. And if you get to the point where you get to this particular sucker punch, I call this its own category. So I see where Dre is coming from because it's such a powerful force. It actually knocked another category into the Mike Slater sucker punch ratings. It's called the lunge grapple attack count, and I held it out through the entire season, starting with this one. This is not a sucker punch. This is an announced lunge grapple attack.
Can I ask a question without spoilers? I don't want spoilers on what they are, but what is the total count for season 1?
For season 1, well, if I just go to my calculation here, go to the bottom of this and carry the one up here. We have 20 throughout the season. I got to 20 by the end of
lunges. Okay.
22 episodes, 20 sucka punches.
And how many lunge attacks though?
1.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna start rolling my eyes. Be like, okay, you made your own category. This is gerrymandering of sucker punches. I don't know. I'm calling the League of Non-Aligned Worlds Mike. This is some bullshit.
I kind of like sequestered it over there. No one said anything for years, so we kept it going, and the vote count stayed over there.
All right. So anyway, now we get to the next scene, which is kind of funny. We have an interrogation. So we have Michael Garibaldi, who is the chief of security. We have Commander Sinclair, who is the commander of the whole ship, and they're like, what are you doing just randomly killing someone? And we get into a weird territory where Natoth, the person who did the sucker punch or lunge attack, says, this is Deathwalker. It's Jean Carr is the real name, but says this is Deathwalker, and basically lays out that this is a Nazi war criminal that did atrocities to the Narn back in the day, and she's got a reason. And, it's basically saying, you're visiting Argentina, hey, that's a Nazi war criminal, but the one issue we're running into, Sinclair and Garibaldi go, well, we know that name. That person would be old and gray and dead at this point, and they're from a race that's dead. Shouting out the Star Trek versus Babylon 5 universe. One thing I love about Babylon 5 is how many just like dead races exist in this universe, where they're basically saying things can kill out entire alien species. There's technologies from entirely alien species that we know nothing about. And the Dilgar are a major name in the history of Babylon 5 that periodically show up, but the race is gone except for who we've just been introduced to, Deathwalker. But Deathwalker looks younger than she was supposed to.
Yeah, did they talk much in this one about Earth's history with the Dilgar, or do they not get into that this episode too much?
They basically say the Earth-Dilgar War. There's an episode with Stephen Franklin later with that. There is a made-for-TV movie where they bring it up. But basically, 30 years ago, the Earth-Dilgar War, the Dilgar was this race doing atrocities across the universe, and that was Earth's kind of big rise to prominence, is this war with the Dilgar. Them helping that is what established them as a major player in the universe. There we go. All right. Now, for some reason, despite having this amazing A-plot with the Dilgar and war criminals, Mike, we return to Talia and Kosh, and we meet. Okay.
I think we should leave that till the end of the discussion because it really doesn't intersect with anything else.
You want to just do all of it? Okay, so actually this is fine. What we'll basically say is, as this episode is going, there is an ongoing storyline between not Gilbert Gottfried, between Kosh, and between Talia Winters. But I'm going to agree is that unlike Star Wars, where they do the A-plot, B-plot intersecting, you're right. That we could actually chunk that all together at the very end because it does not.
Let's keep on the A-plot and
normally
keep going.
I'm against that. JMS is really good at intertwining plots and stuff, but you are right. There is actually, beyond the fact that it is a Vorlon doing it, and I would make the argument, I'll give the spoiler, that is probably the only reason he did it, is he says, I want Vorlons in your mind this entire episode. I don't want you to forget about, I want a reason for a Vorlon to appear at the beginning of this episode. I want the Vorlon to stay on your mind the entire episode. So at the end of the episode, and we'll get there, he's there, but you're right. Beyond that, the plot doesn't matter. So we'll wrap that all up at the end.
So yeah, let's move on to the MedLab scene. Yeah, where they've got
I've got lots of mean comments here. So it's Jadur is her name. And here is the rough part.
Her name is Jadur.
So Stephen Franklin is the doctor of MedLab, chief of MedLab. He's patching her up. And he's just like, holy cow, she's healing really quick, but I don't recognize her alien species. And then Sinclair shows up and is like, oh, she's Deathwalker. She's a Nazi war criminal. I make a pedantic point here where Stephen Franklin's like, that doesn't make any sense, though. She would be really old now. And I'm like, a second ago, you didn't know what alien race she was. So how would you know how that alien race ages?
Yeah, but also, he is one of the best xenobiologists.
Who didn't recognize a Dilgar? So I don't know. It's all over.
Yeah, I don't know. But like, I haven't played a recorder since I was 10 years old, but I can still pick up a few tunes on it because of the training. I think with Franklin's training, he would be able to get around that. So I dismiss your pedantic statement.
All right, I'll take it. We'll let the listeners decide. Now what we get.
No, you don't have to allow it, but you do have to take it.
Okay, so Garibaldi comes. This is what I love this next part of this scene, by the way. It made me laugh. So Garibaldi comes in. He's like, we searched her ship. Here is Jadar's uniform. Here is a nameplate that says Jadar. And here is this weird alien fluid I've never seen. And Sinclair's like, well, that didn't prove anything. So anyway, he leaves the fluid with Dr. Franklin. and we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Now we start seeing where everything's going on because Sinclair gets called away. Earth is called to on a gold channel. Gold channel is like the highest priority channel. So Sinclair, Earth is calling, which interesting. And what we're going to see next is Jakar and Natath. So Natath, the not sucka puncher of J'adore, Deathwalker, is talking to Jakar, who is the main alien ambassador for the Narn. He's like, look it, I feel you. You wanted to punch that Nazi, but we wanted to trade that Nazi some paper clips for rocket science. True story. Go look up Earth history, by the way, people.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly what's going on right there in Babylon 5, too.
Yeah, so basically, it's almost as if JMS has a really intensive history knowledge of Nazis and how it applies in the United States. And it is a bummer how much that comes up on this show and how prescient it is, because this show is 30 years old, applies today.
Yeah, quite the prescient show to be watching right now in 2020-25.
So much. But Jakar's basically going, hey, look, you weren't supposed to punch her. We were meeting with her. We were going to trade her. And she's like, I've got a blood oath death wish on her. And Jakar, this is weird because they try and play it as kind of ominous, where he's going, look here's what we're going to do. We're going to get the Nazi secrets we need from Deathwalker, and then I'll help you with her death. So it's funny because they're trying to play Jakar as duplicitous. That's how he kind of is in season 1. Spoiler alert, that's his arc is a huge part of the show. So in season 1, he's still supposed to be kind of the conniving one. But even here,
I think he even at this early point, he still comes but as more of an advisor, and I think this comes off way less scheming even than a lot of the stuff that Lando is even doing or this early in the series.
Yeah.
Jakar definitely comes out as more of like the holy male or the Cassandra who knows what's going to happen, but can't see it.
Yeah,
or can't affect it.
Now we also get a double reinforcement. We get that senator call that Sinclair got called to, and they basically say the same thing. Hey, Earth is going to meet with Deathwalker, and we got a deal. She's got something we all want. So everybody's interested in Deathwalker. Then we come back to MedLab. Deathwalker wakes up because, Dr. Sheridan is like, where should I look at this top secret research of this possible Nazi war criminal? On the table right next to her, of course. So she wakes up, says, how dare he go through her life's work? Sinclair passes Londo, one of the Centauri are the other main race. So the main races are the Minbari, the Vorlon, Earth, the Narn, the Centauri. Those are the 5 major races on the station. And so we have now seen
the humans, not the Earths. I'm a human. I'm not an Earth.
You're not an Earther? Okay.
Earther? Well, I could be an Earther or a Terran if we go into my Guardians.
I'll give you that. Okay, so we have now seen 4 of the major races say, hey, Deathwalker, what's going on? Because Londo says, hey, I hear you got Deathwalker. And Sinclair goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And what we find out is that the Minbari, one of the oldest races, they have been sheltering her. And just to give a little bit of backstory to the pilot, because this is kind of important, is the reason this is important, Mike, is for one of the most pedantic reasons ever. So I apologize.
No, now I'm really into it. All right.
You can start queuing up the music, Mike. So I'm going to go back to the pilot, which we are not going to do an episode on. In the pilot episode, Kosh is poisoned by Commander Sinclair, but it turns out it wasn't Commander Sinclair. It was a Minbari with a mesh suit that lets you transform and shapeshift to look like anybody. Do they ever bring that technology up again? No. Why would they? But that's the pilot episode.
No, they just gave it to Tom Cruise, and he took his own franchise with it.
Yep, that's it. Tom Cruise is like, Mission Impossible can use this, and JMS is like,
I'll take that.
JMS is like, I got no residuals for that. So anyway, back in the day, as you noted, JMS interacted a bunch with fans on the internet, and they said, wait a minute, Kosh is in an encounter suit. How did he get poisoned through his encounter suit? What we discover here is Shadar, aka Deathwalker, is being housed by the Wind Swords, who are a subsect of the Minbari, who are one of the oldest races. And the Wind Swords are one of the more adamant warrior castes. The Wind Swords are probably, according to JMS, agents of an evil alien race that we'll talk more about in the future. So what JMS does, and you might argue this is clever writing, you might argue this is a writer being able to BS their way out of someone calling him on a plot hole, says, hey, if the Wind Swords are getting old technology, they would be able to figure out how to get around Kosh's encounter suit. And that is who this person is working with. So basically, this kind of ties into a plot hole. This episode is important to a plot hole that was introduced early on, which is to say, we are introduced to the Wind Swords, this possible evil group of Minbari who will work with Nazi war criminals. And does it matter in the future? So many things this episode, Mike. No, but it's there. It's interesting.
Yeah. I think I like that so far this episode. We've brought so many reasons why things don't ever come back or go to dead ends, and we haven't brought up the reason quite yet why we really wanted to talk about this episode. I think it's coming up a couple scenes.
Yeah, well, we got a bunch. I mean, well, here's what's really I think that's actually worth discussing a little bit, which is Babylon 5 is this big 5-year plan, and the key point with how JMS thought that up was, if I'm going to do 5 years, I can't have 5 years etched in stone because things change. And we're going to discover that. We might discuss a little bit of that towards the end of this episode, but actors from season 1 get other roles, have to leave for various reasons. So it's going, if I've got a 5-year arc and it's set in stone and my lead actor leaves, what the hell do I do? JMS thought of backdoors and things for that. And so essentially what he would say is he'd go, I'm going to have a plot point I will pay off. The details might not matter as much as you think. It might not matter that it's the Wind Swords or another race, but this plot will pay off. You're not going to feel bad that you got invested in why are some Minbari helping out this war criminal. But the exacts might have to go away because things change. So this episode, when you're kind of talking that, like why this episode matters is we have so much of the groundwork for the future laid. This is kind of one of the first episodes where we shift from monster of the week to long term. And we are, with the benefit of the future, also seeing the kind of fallout of that going is that so much of the future is laid out in this episode. There's also a lot of stuff that was laid out that never really comes up again, but it doesn't matter because that's good storytelling. It's going, make sure I don't leave any unfinished plot points, but if I have a detail that could help a plot point, but I don't wind up needing it, I don't need to use that detail. That's kind of a JMS thing.
Yeah, and all the things that are in there we're talking about, just like getting more of Talia and Kosh into the episode. At the time, it's something you had to do, was to keep those actors and those characters in on it, even if they're not carrying like the huge ball of something that's going to go into the next season.
And it's entirely possible they might, and it's entirely possible they might not. And I would actually make the argument that so much of the external stuff that impacted Babylon 5, because there's a lot of that, and I don't know if this is the episode for it, Mike, but certainly some will be, is I think the fact that so much external stuff impacted the show, but the storyline kept going and still worked, made it feel more real to me, because that's real life, right? That's what so many people praised George R.R. Martin with Game of Thrones. It's going, well, we have this prophecy. Hey, what happens if the person just gets a staph infection and dies, right?
It's always, you got to find the yin and yang to anything you're doing with a performance. I do a lot of music performance, and I find it's like, it's always half preparation and half improv. I mean, we can get really meta, and that's like what making a podcast is. Like, you can only prepare so much, watch the episode so much, and know what you're going to talk about, and what it's going to happen is in the moment. But that's what JMS was doing the whole time with all of this, all those trapdoors you were just talking about. He knew that he had to prepare for anything, but he had to be able to improvise in the moment, episode to episode. If things went, if an actor, something happened to them, they went off, they lost their money in between seasons, anything could change.
And it does, and that will be so much fun to talk about. Now, what we're going to reveal, so I've mentioned so many dead plot points that don't pay off, but we're going to get to one of the first ones that does. Deathwalker reveals she has made an immortality serum, basically something that she says retards the aging process, one of the only cases of using that word correctly on the air. Because normally you go back to the 90s and that word is used.
It slows the aging process.
Slows, but that's what she says there. That is, I'm quoting the episode. And then she also noticed that it also, helps cure things, etc. So she's like, I have got, the fountain of youth here. This is important. This is huge. And, we're going to be off to the races. And if you're wondering if it's a monkey's paw scenario, spoiler it is, but we'll get to that shortly. Skipping over Talia and Kosh, just pretend we talked about it at the end. Then we've got, now we get racist Lanier. I thought this was actually interesting in rewatching it. So the Minbari, we're missing our primary Minbari protagonist, which is Delenn. And I think that's probably good for this episode. I don't think it would have done her well to be in this episode. So we've got Lanier, and we almost played by Bill Mumy of Lost in Space fame, as well as Twilight Zone. Yeah. He is the kid in the cornfield. But it was really funny because he's talking to Sinclair, and he calls the Narn, he says, a most passionate people. And I was like, you racist. I was like,
feels so coded.
and it works so well in this case because you basically have a stodgy old white race going, oh man, those super emotional younger races. And you're like, you're about to do something shitty, aren't you? And spoiler alert, they are. So anyway, he does reveal, he's like, yeah, Deathwalker was dressed in Minbari clothes, which is kind of weird. It's part of the Wind Swords, as I've mentioned, a militant outcast, like kind of like just a really, really zealotous sect of the Minbari. And he says he'll ask Delenn about it. So we're getting something laid for, hey, the Minbari shouldn't like Deathwalker, but is something going to cause a problem? Because that's what this is.
They're really kind of cagey about any of what's going on there too, because they don't really say like what. They don't bring up any of the religious caste stuff yet or what different castes within. They just this idea that, hey, there's different factions within the society. So I kind of liked how he brought that up with this episode.
And we've had inklings of that. There's been some aspects of that in, I think, an episode or two before. A weird Minbari showed up and told Delenn that if Sinclair found the hole in his mind, he'd have to be killed. So we're like, it's very fun because we've got Delenn and Lanier who are kind of portrayed as these very peaceful, kind of monkish people, and the Minbari are this old cultured race. And then we keep seeing behind the scenes that there are factions of the Minbari who might not be as nice, and that's definitely interesting and is going to come up more. Now, we wind up with G'Kar going back. And I do love this because he goes up to Deathwalker and is like, look it, so we tried to kill you. My bad. We still good? And I'm actually on Deathwalker's side here because she's like, yeah, we're still good. Because I think G'Kar offers like triple the price of whatever Earth is offering. But she says, bring me Nathath's head within the hour. Which is fair, actually. That's completely fair. But then she starts, she's like an evil, her makeup makes her look like an evil cat lady. And she starts laughing maniacally, cutting into obviously a commercial break. And I think the note I had in our initial script to each other, Mike, I was like, Deathwalker. I was like, you think you can trust someone, and then Deathwalker, you're evil. You think
I think my notes were just all about them hiding the butthole cut for a cat lady.
Yeah, because going for the cats thing, keeping it super topical. People are gonna remember that reference, right? That there was
from like to 6-7 years ago. Yeah,
the Cats musical that had a cut that they had to pay millions of dollars to CGI out cat buttholes. That happened. People, look it up.
Babylon 5 deserves that treatment. You can't put a Muppet Cat on stage without, bringing up the butthole cut.
That would be funny, just to that point, because she does look like a cat lady. If they did just keep introducing random cat mannerisms. In season 1, they kind of leaned in more to this idea of vastly different alien species. We have like an insectoid one, like with Muppeteers doing.
But they only settle down on like the main 5 and then a few of the non-aligned worlds. Like there's the fish people. There's the Drazi,
the
lizard ones. You
basically have all humanoid looking people with 2 variants, either lizardy looking or humanoid looking. And they kind of shy away from that in after season 1.
Yeah, but they really played along with that, especially with the cat design, because they gave her like the feline ears and eyes. I can't remember a tail or not, but they did nothing else with it.
She's randomly like licking her cell. She's like got a litter box in the corner in her cell. Like they'd really gone. That could have been there. You are not. I'm angry because you started this as a joke, but the cat butthole cut of this episode could exist. There's a variant. Sinclair could be walking in, and there's a litter box in the corner, and she's like turning around, and you're like, what's going on?
Bring us the B5 litter box cut. Meow.
All right, so now we kind of get the main players recapping. So we got Sinclair, Garibaldi. Ivanova shows up. She's second in command. We haven't seen much of her, but she shows up a little. And Dr. Franklin all show up. And it's not too over the top, but they are having the philosophical debate of this going. Deathwalker has come up with this serum that is really advanced. Yeah. Dr. Franklin says, hey, we need her. Because Garibaldi makes the right point. He's like, hey, we've got it. She's a war criminal. Let's kill her, take the technology, best of both worlds. And Franklin basically says, problem, right? The Nazi scientists that have to help you win the space race. We cannot develop this without her. I keep bringing this up. This is a real thing. Go look it up in U.S. history, Operation Paperclip, where you have people that have won a war with war criminals saying, we want the scientists of those war criminals, so we will look the other way on our ethics as long as we advance ourselves.
I think it's a little different just because she left out the one ingredient and made sure that they needed her to be able to synthesize it.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, I would say what I would actually argue that you're pointing out is,
take us away, Dre.
She gives them a very easy out to make this less of a moral dilemma, because we are presented with the classic moral dilemma. Do you let a bad person do a good thing if it benefits all of us? And we are going to discover very shortly, don't worry, we're getting there because we're going to skip over Talia, that this is a monkey's paw scenario. All right, so here's what we get to. Earth is going to smuggle out Deathwalker. They've made an agreement with her. Hey, we'll work with you to help get your formula. We'll sneak you out past everybody. Garibaldi, as chief of security, is knowing, by the way, you're probably in trouble because everybody either wants what she has or wants to kill her. There's everybody on the station either wants to get Deathwalker's technology for the immortality serum or wants to kill Deathwalker because she is a war criminal. And lo and behold, Jakar does that. So he actually calls, I missed her name, I think it's Calica. So there are the major races we brought up. There are a bunch of minor planets that are represented as they're called the League of Non-Aligned Worlds. So you basically have the major powers, if you were thinking like the Security Committee at the UN, and then you have all of the other nations that are represented. They get a vote. They basically find out that they are going to smuggle out Deathwalker, and they block him in the hall and like, you're not smuggling her out. She is a war criminal. She has to stand trial for what she's done. And they go, get out of the way. And the League of Non-Aligned Worlds says, you're going to have to kill all of us, which, man, they're lucky this is season 1 of Babylon 5, because season 2, season 3 of Babylon 5 under President Clark, spoiler alert, they might all be dead. Be a much different show. But luckily, Sinclair says, cool, we'll take a break. We'll take a recess. We'll reconvene in 3 hours to vote on if we need to try Deathwalker as a war criminal.
Because all the non-aligned worlds aren't going to let her off the ship, because all of them, it's not just what's in the Toth, it has a blood oath against the Deathwalker. They were going out and destroying all these different worlds. So all these different non-aligned worlds want her brought to justice and want to try.
This is where, like I said, the compare and contrast season 4 versus season 9. We decided this episode because we said this is where the series really turned into what it became. I would argue Deathwalker is the start of the big Babylon 5 thing, because JMS had to use those first 8 episodes to kind of slowly get you in the water. And this is the episode he throws you in, right? Because first scene, you've got a Vorlon and a telepath just talking and going a million miles an hour, and all of the dialogue. This episode, for the most part, I think there's one section where the dialogue's not great. And I would argue the Talia Kosh stuff isn't amazing. There's just a variety of reasons that we'll get to at the end, but it doesn't work.
But when we get to the voting and the voting scene, that is some really good work. And that's what I think really brought the Babylon 5 up a level for me.
Tell it like it is, Dre.
This episode absolutely crushed it in that regard. And so we 100% get to this point of a bunch of stuff being dropped in organically, where even on the recap, I didn't bring it up because it was so organic, it would be halting. But throughout this episode, we've been hearing about the atrocities she committed. She experimented on entire groups of people. She infected her own kind with this. So it's very much at this point in the episode, we 100% understand, both by the sucka punch from Natoth and from all of the sprinkling in, just how horrible this person is and the delay.
I see what you did there.
How you did. All right. Now, we get to them voting. And Sinclair spoils it ahead of time for us, kind of. He goes, hey, look, here's what's going to happen. The Vorlons are going to abstain because they don't care about anybody. I'm going to vote she needs to go on trial. The Minbari are going to vote she needs to go on trial. The League of Non-Aligned Worlds are going to vote she needs to go on trial. The Narn, of course, are going to vote. It doesn't matter. And then he basically says, it doesn't matter what the Narn and Centauri do, because that's 3-2. We're fine. Like we expect, the Vorlons don't do anything. Maybe. Earth votes yes. Centauri, at this point, Londo is more bumbling and pulls a Switzerland. He's like, we don't care. Why do we care? I'm not doing anything. I love Londo Mollari is one of the best characters. I'm glad he was actually in this episode, but he is a very non-entity.
Yeah.
And in fact, I will jump ahead. At one point in the episode, he actually just says, like, he has so many like cute, he's just an observer this episode, which makes him the best, because he just like has like sarcastic lines. At one point, he's like, Sinclair says, we were trying to keep a low profile, and he's just like, Well, good job.
Well, yeah, we haven't talked about
all's
him.
well
He's like an old Russian space vampire. He's like Grandpa Munster, but not quite as decrepit.
That is true. That is really his role this episode.
Young Grandpa Munster, yeah.
We have established at this point that Londo Mollari is not a very successful one. He is a career politician. So he's basically going, I'm not going to extend any capital on this. I've got no skin in the game. I'm staying out of this. So, okay, so we got a no vote from him. Narn, Jakar is incredibly duplicitous. I love this. He says, yes, but hey, we're going to vote yes, but we're neutral. The Narn are neutral. So as long as we have the trial on our planet and we'll take custody of her, because remember, there's already a backdoor deal. So he's being really clever. Hey, if we take her to our planet, do the trial there, well, guess what? She has to come to their planet. They'll be able to talk to her while she's doing it. Everybody sees through the most obvious ruse here. They say no, and he goes, "You can't be on our planet. I'm really sorry, no."
Yeah, it was a very good Jakar scene. I thought he played that so well.
Of course, the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, who threatened to all die if she got off the ship, vote yes. We get to the Minbari. Minbari are supposed to vote yes, but we've already seen racist Lanier. We already kind of had the hat tip, and Lanier says, basically copies Londo, says, "Hey, we weren't involved, no." And after, Sinclair basically says, "What the hell, man?" And Lanier says exactly that. He says, "Hey, we had a subset of our race that basically aided and abetted her after the war. And that was embarrassing for us. And so instead of going to trial and having to live with that shame as a group and saying some of us messed up, we're just going to vote no." And by the way, that is a recurring theme about the Minbari that is going to show up in the show, of them having this weird honor of not, like, they say they don't lie, but they really care about honor and are
like this.
They are really able to use honor to justify so many things, and that is going to be a key aspect of the Minbari throughout the show. So again, when we're talking stuff that's getting laid, the immortality stuff, we're going to talk more about it in a second, how the races are interacting, all of these weird politickings, this episode lays so much of that up and does it, I think we're agreeing, like, so well. And then, luckily enough, Sinclair, something that we keep presenting about Sinclair is that he is supposed to be this kind of Picard-like character. And I'm really going to love where that goes in the future. So I had to keep putting pins in future things. I get to read ahead, people. I see ahead in the notes, and there's good stuff coming. So anyway, Sinclair says, "Hey, I've got a compromise. Here's what we're going to do. We're all going to work together." So he says, "League of Non-Aligned Worlds, all of you get representatives that you want to work on this. We will place her in collective custody, so we all have an eye on her. We will all work on it together. We will all get the shared output of this work together, and when that is done, we will all put her on trial together." So the League says yes. So hey, we found a compromise out of this, Mike. We're good. A great writer like JMS would certainly not have a sucker punch for all of us to end this. Oh, boom, he does. Deathwalker.
What is this?
Can't believe Death. I can't believe, Deathwalker, Mike, you think you know someone. Deathwalker says, "Hey, you've been teasing us the whole one." I actually want to let you do this because you've been teasing us. So Deathwalker, I said Walker like sucka, but Deathwalker comes in and says, "Hey, Deathwalker punch." Yeah, Waka. Get Fozzie in there. It all comes together, Mike. But
Deathwalker, Space Ranger.
Gives the final reveal.
So the secret ingredient, it's people.
Soylent Green. It is the Soylent Green reveal.
Yeah,
You're right.
Totally. You have to take, and I was interested in this. How do you think is the extraction method? Because what she reveals is that in order to get the immortality serum to work, you have to take someone else's life. And that's her big plan. That's the Nazis' plan, to give this gift to the rest of the universe, to all these races, so they would slowly start tearing each other apart for immortality.
Her first villain monologue to Sinclair is, "You beat us in the war. I'm going to give you this gift that is going to advance your race tremendously, and you are going to have to remember me fondly," right? There is going to be the Carnegie Mellon Hall for Deathwalker. And she's like, "And that's my revenge. I'm a war criminal, and I'm going to be remembered by everyone as the hero." And we're like, okay, that makes sense as a villain plan. And then later she's like, actually,
the real plan.
Spoiler, it's actually worse. It's you're all going to have to kill each other to decide who gets immortality. So you won the war, but you thought you were getting along. You're all going to work together in harmony. You're all going to tear each other apart.
Yeah,
and
and I
she's
think she even
laughing.
mentions that she will be the one that'll take the credit. Like future generations will fear her name as the one who gave this gift to the world that destroyed everybody. And she's like cackling maniacally about
Yeah,
that.
so that's what she wants. Awesome. So we're getting a, oh my gosh, she's leaving. We're gonna lose. And this one qualifies as a sucker punch, Mike. So we agree on
Yes.
that, right? This next one in
Oh,
your
this is
sucker punch
definitely
article,
this is a space sucker punch.
space sucker punch. You want to tell us what happens?
Well, they're taking her away, and they got her in a shuttle when a jump gate opens out of nowhere, and a giant ship comes in. It's a Vorlon ship, and takes her out before she can jump away.
And then Kosh walks in. Again, this is so rough because he's supposed to be ominous. He's supposed to be intimidating. He really is in the show. He really is. But this episode, as I was watching, I could just not help watch how much that cape moved around and how fake his movements look. I'm really, really sorry. They do figure it out later. But he walks in and says, "You are not ready for immortality," and turns around and leaves ominously.
And
Londo says, "All's well that ends well."
Too, because you mentioned a couple times earlier about why is he in this episode, and they just needed some B story to keep Kosh in everyone's mind so he could deliver that last line when the Vorlons come in.
And here's what sucks, because I think they should have ended on that. But what they do is we have a Talia wrap up. So let's condense the Talia storyline really quick. So yeah, Garibaldi and Sinclair are talking the ethics of what just happened together at the bar at the end of the show. And that's kind of a common thing, which works okay. It's not always the best because it's like, are we ready for immortality? Blah, 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 right? Talia walks up and she's going to recap the day to Michael and Jeff. And so what she says is she goes, "Hey, I got hired to barter this negotiation between the Vorlon, Kosh, the guy that just blew up Cat Lady, and this other guy who is Gilbert Gottfried in, I called him the I Think You Should Leave hat guy. Do you remember that? The stupid hat from I Think You Should Leave? It looks like that.
I remember it. Do you remember UHF, the Weird Al movie?
Okay, I do, yeah.
The scene where Derek McGavin tells him, "And take that ridiculous thing off." And you think he's going to take off like his giant hat. That's that same hat. He just takes his fake mustache off.
Okay, I'm excited to look up the scene right after. UHF, a gem that got blasted by coming out in the wrong summer. Just talk about bad timing. But yeah, so essentially this weirdo guy that says a bunch of weird stuff was supposed to be Gilbert Gottfried. Apparently, I would have loved to see that cut, who has like a brain head underneath his hat and no thoughts. So Talia Winters is a telepath. This guy has no thoughts. Kosh and him are just babbling back and forth weird things, but then randomly in the talks, Talia Winters gets flashbacks to a serial killer whose mind she scanned, and some of the worst special effects to show her mind thoughts.
Like a half built mirror maze. She's standing in a dead black room with like three of her around there. It was
as well as also, like, you called it like a laser tag arena in our notes. So just horrible special effects. But the key basically is Talia Winters a few episodes back was granted telekinesis by a super powerful telepath. We are told, not shown, that Kosh as a Vorlon fears telepaths. So they want something against the telepath. So basically Kosh didn't need Talia to broker anything. He just wanted to gain leverage against her somehow, and somehow got this data crystal. Because that's the weird thing. This guy has a brain hat. He pulls off his head. He's got a brain head. He pulls a data crystal out, like a USB thing, from his head, hands it to Kosh.
Is the implication that he's recording like Talia getting a copy of her brain or something about her brain waves?
Talia says, "What was on that data crystal?" And he says, "Reflection, surprise, and terror." Talia says, "For what?" And he says, "For the future." So essentially, we're being told Kosh now has leverage against Talia, who is one of the we have been told she is one of the most powerful beings on the ship. And 2 of the previous episodes did bring that up. So that's kind of where we land. And she comes back and says, "Hey, Kosh just did something weird and I don't know what's going on." And Garibaldi's like, "Those Vorlons, man, they're just having a day. They're really sketchy." And that's the show.
Yeah, that was some of the wildest, like, tell don't show for the show, too. I was really disappointed in that because, like, just her character in general, they keep talking about how powerful she is, and they've never really managed to show it, at least, especially not up to this point.
It's really rough. I mean, here's the question. Now, by the way, we're at the end of the episode. We're in soft spoiler territory. So we're going to talk a little bit about the implications of the episode for the rest of the show what we're going to do next. That's where we're at now. And what makes this episode fascinating is, one, it's the start, as we're agreeing, like the start of this show getting going. But it's also so fascinating with how much of this show does not stick around, right? The reason I think the wind swords with the Minbari don't really stick around is, spoiler alert, Michael O'Hare, who plays Jeffrey Sinclair, has to leave the show at the end of season 1. And it turns out this is such a fascinating tale. It comes up in Becoming Superman. No one knew this for years. He had to quit the show because he had mental illness. But JMS did not tell anybody and only revealed that after Michael O'Hare died with his blessing.
Oh, yeah. We're going to go way deeper into that. It's like when we come closer to those happenings on that. But that was a huge thing because you were talking about trap doors that he left in case anything happened. And that was kind of the biggest trapdoor he had to have. He was basing the entire arc of the series around Sinclair, and to lose him after basically the first chapter of your book is like, should be just obliterated. But he managed to keep it going.
And we and as mentioned, like we do have with this Dilgar, with Deathwalker, when she comes up, she even says, you have a hole in your mind. I heard that from the Windswords who I was with. And in the pilot episode, he's told you have a hole in your mind. And 2 episodes ago, we had this weird thing, seeing he has a hole in his mind. So that was going to be huge, that he had a hole in his mind and he had bifurcated the Minbari people because they quit the war over him and why and all that. And we will get back to that.
Yeah.
So that was definitely fascinating. But I was going to say, that was fascinating in this episode to see it going, this is where it really gets going, and it's really fascinating in hindsight to be able to look and go, oh, that's what happened here. So if you were watching this the first time with us in syndicated television back in the day, we, of course, wouldn't know that. But if you were someone watching Babylon 5 in reruns, which is how I caught it when it came to TNT, this would be the thing where you're like, oh, yeah, Sinclair seems like is important, but something's crazy going to happen with him.
And that's something else that JMS had to do, speaking of syndication, like confirming that because the episode numbers that, they would be broadcast in order. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be worth syndicating a show like this.
And that's wild when you bring up like future things such as Firefly is the best example, where people have a bunch of reasons why Firefly failed as a show. And it's not for lack of, at least at the time, great acting, good writing at the time, right? You know, some stuff might be dated, but everything dates itself eventually.
It was out of order.
Yeah, It was aired out of order. And so it's like, you have this episode calling back to it because the logic the stations gave is they said, the first episode needs to be an action-paced one, so let's do this bank heist episode as the one we reveal, and you could raise your hand properly and go, hey, that episode references a bunch of stuff that hasn't happened. People are going to be confused, and you're right. So JMS being able to do that is actually wild. That is a testament to this show, and I do remember that when it was on TNT, it was in order. And the only thing that really sucked is if you I missed Signs Importance the first time through. I wasn't able to catch that episode live.
Ooh, speaking of that episode.
Yeah, I missed Signs Importance. I had to wait like months for it to come back on.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah, that's rough at the same time. But that's the ups and the downs of syndicated television from back in the day. Things like The Simpsons or anything that didn't go episode to episode was nice to just like come in after a while. And even like thinking about The Simpsons, I was thinking about this lately because they've gone on so long. They've way outlasted that whole debate we always used to have of, hey, which season did it go bad in? And now, because there's 30 plus seasons of Simpsons, you can take chunks of it at a time and it becomes a microcosm for whatever the zeitgeist was at that moment in time in different ways. It's like, how did the Simpsons relate to that point? Similar to like South Park or Family Guy or anything that's gone on like a huge amount of time.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the when did it go bad or when this, that is a much wider discussion that gets super duper fascinating. But yeah, it's been so much fun going back to see what worked, what didn't.
Yeah.
How did JMS work around stuff? The next episode we're going to be doing, as mentioned, is actually Signs Importance, which is that's the title of the season for what it's worth. And one of the 2 episodes on the DVD set that JMS gives director's commentary on, which I really dug. So I was able to get some of that. So that's the next episode we're going to be going, and that is 4 episodes from now. So episode 13, if you want to get ahead. Mike, anything else to discuss about Babylon 5, JMS, Deathwalker, Is it a sucker punch or not?
We covered so much today. I'm glad we got through this. I got the, first episode Wiggles out last time and the second first episode Wiggles out this time. So I think, I think we covered everything we needed for now up to this point. And I think we have a lot more Babylon 5 talk to look forward to in the future.
I will say it's amusing because we're on Zoom together for people listening in just the audio medium. And there have been a couple times this episode, tell me if I'm reading this wrong, Mike, where I'm talking and I'm like, you can cut in if you want. And it almost looks like an evil grin. And you're like, see how long you're going to go.
Yep.
I want to see how long you go. Like, I'm like, my breath's going to...
So many just let Dre cook moments in this episode. And I said, like, you're the one who's seen... I've only seen these episodes once at this point, and maybe some of them more than once from back in the 90s, but I was not like the religious watcher that you have been over the years of this and rewatcher. So yeah, it's definitely... more of what's going on deeper in these episodes, and I like that I can cut in every once in a while and just, hey, what about this? Or, you just said this and bring up something. But yeah, I like how you were doing that.
I will, the final capper I've said a couple times and I'll keep saying is, I am impressed how well this is aged. I can see all the seams, I can see all the weak stuff that I already knew about, that I had already known about in the past. But I have been way more impressed with season 1. Because I remembered it being worse, and we'll discuss why, because when we get to season 2, there is a major upgrade at the lead actor, and that's going to be a fascinating discussion. But season 1's aged pretty well, and I would say the next 2 episodes we're going to do Signs and Portents and the finale, which is Chrysalis.
Chrysalis, yeah.
So we're going to do episode 13, Signs and Portents, episode 22, Chrysalis. Sorry, Jeff, we will not be doing TKO. Which is not a good episode.
No,
you can skip TKO unless you're watching it for a podcast.
TKO on your own time.
But Signs and Portents and Chrysalis are the next 2 up if you want to get ahead. I've been Dre, Nerd Numbers most places. Mike Slater,
Slatron everywhere.
And then your site. Oh, now here's the thing. If after this you do not immediately go to, I'm assuming MikeSlater.com?
Yep, MikeSlater.com. You go to that. I'm going to have episode wrap-ups. I'm going to have tie-in pictures.
Head to MikeSlater.com. I am more than fine if you don't have a comment section, which I argue may have been a mistake on the internet. But people, go to Blue Sky, tag Mike Slatron on Blue Sky, grab a link to his Sucka Punch article, and tell him he's wrong about Natah. Just do that as a favor for me. By the time this is out, hopefully that's there. Do it for me. MikeSlater.com, Slatron11, Nerd Numbers. That's everything. You got to check this out. We will see you next time for Signs and Portents.
Cheers, all.